And so I'm walking with the vice president of communications to this next meeting. And as we approach the building, my heart starts beating. I break out in a cold sweat. And I'm almost in a sheer panic because I think to myself, oh my God, I am going to set off the alarm.
That was Todd here in the NCPR studios in Canton, New York. And on today's episode of The Howl, man, I am so glad that smartphones didn't exist when I was a kid. From NCPR and the Adirondack Center for Writing, I'm Ethan Shanty. This is The Howl. You know, being a kid is all about getting away with stuff. And for the purposes of today's episode, let's call a kid anyone between the ages of, say, like 5 and 25. Because after 25, that's when people really start saying, well, you should have known better. But till then, you're likely prone to stupid behavior without really considering the consequences. And for real, I am so glad that nobody was filming all the stuff that I got into and that social media didn't come around until the end of high school for me. Because I wouldn't want any of that old stuff to surface. You know, it's not like I was committing crimes all over the North Country, but it was kind of embarrassing and dangerous, and I'm really glad that nobody got hurt. But this show is about nothing if not embarrassing yourself a little bit. So, in honor of all the people out there who are now old enough to know better, including myself, here's a not quite comprehensive list of some of the ridiculous things that I did or was a party to as a kid, with names redacted for potential legal purposes. To start things off, driving my truck with bad brakes for so long that I had to use the emergency brake to slow down, and I only got it fixed when the e-brake failed, causing me to sail through a busy intersection with a friend in the car with me. My friend deliberately flying through a stop sign at 55 miles per hour just because. My friend burning me with my car's cigarette lighter while driving on the highway because he, quote, didn't know it would be hot. Several friends throwing themselves down several flights of stairs just for the laugh. Tying a shovel to a rope and then tying that rope to the back of an ATV, then sitting on that shovel as the ATV whipped around a driveway. Or my brother sledding off the roof of my parents' house. Or my brother who set a rug on fire in the barn because he was trying to kill a nest of bees. Smashing soda cans with a priceless antique vase and then taping that vase back together with electrical tape after it split into 4 pieces. A girlfriend, she won't let me say which one, but it is the current one, almost setting her parents' house on fire while playing with matches. Speaking of matches, my friends and I inventing the match game, where we would all stand in a circle and shoot lit matches at one another. Or my friend setting my hair on fire in the high school band room. And speaking of the band room, my friend shoving a paper clip into a light switch just to see what would happen. Or how about diving headfirst off the top of a sand pit? Or all of the trees, gorges, and incredibly safe rope swings that we jumped off of. And then there were certain nameless friends who made a game out of seeing how much they could shoplift from the mall at any given time. And last, for today, but certainly not the last ever, giving myself my first ever panic attack while driving down the highway because I slammed an energy drink, decided it wasn't doing enough, and then immediately chugged a 5-hour energy shot. Was that the time that a cop pulled me over and I pulled off to the wrong side of the highway? Or was that another time? Honestly, all those car stories kind of make me think that somebody should have taken my license away a long time ago, but in any case, I am really glad that nobody got hurt, and I'm doubly glad that nobody had a cell phone to document any of it. Good luck is often a kid's best friend, and seemingly I had quite a bit of good luck, and I can say I'm thankful now that I've aged out of doing stupid stuff, for the most part, anyway. Todd has got a great story for us today about his friends getting up to some ridiculous things as well. And unfortunately for Aaron, he would feel the consequences, but not for many years to come. Here's Todd, recorded at the NCPR studios in Canton.
I was a student at St. Lawrence University, and I was living in a suite with my cross-country teammates, and we were tight. We did everything together. We woke up in the morning and went on morning runs. We'd run for 4 miles before we even had breakfast. Then we'd go to the dining hall and we'd eat enormous piles of food. We'd go to class, and then in the afternoon, we all went to practice together. And then after practice, we'd once again go to the dining hall together and again eat enormous piles of food. Some of us had been high school teammates. Many of us had been rivals. We had a lot of North Country natives on the team, so we had run against each other over the years. We'd known each other for the better part of a decade. And by the time I was a sophomore and then going into junior year, we were living together in a suite. 7 teammates from the men's cross-country team, all bound together in a suite that was smaller than it should have been, that had a bathroom that was far dirtier than it should have been, and that smelled way worse than any place anyone would want to live. But we loved it. We had such a great community in that suite. And one of the things that invariably happens when you live in a suite with your teammates that you spend too much time with is that pranks eventually begin to occur. And usually there's a target. And I don't know if it's maybe because I'm the youngest of 3 brothers in my family and I'd always been a target growing up, but I sort of turned into the target for many of the pranks. I think I was a great audience for it because I would have an outsized reaction, but it was almost theatrical. I understood. I come from a family where if you are the target of pranks and jokes, that's how people show love. It is a way of acceptance. And I understood that in a way that some others didn't, because they might get pranked and we all thought it was funny. But if they reacted in such a way that it was clear that they didn't receive it in the way that it was intended, it could create some tension. And even though I probably got a little angry sometimes, I was still a great target. Well, some of the guys who lived in the suite with me worked at the library, which we affectionately at St. Lawrence call ODY, the O&D Young Library. And so you would walk in the door and they'd be at the circulation desk. And one day after practice, it was the evening, I usually went to the library to study because the suite was not a good place to accomplish any sort of academic work. It was a busy place. People were playing video games or music too loud. We had guests constantly, so I always went to the library. So I walk into ODY, and at that time they had these stanchions that if you walk into a Walmart today, they're the things that you walk through when you leave to determine whether you're shoplifting. If you have anything in there that you're not supposed to, an alarm goes off. Well, I went through the revolving doors at ODY into the library, and the alarm went off when I went through those stanchions. And I was confused. I thought, that's strange. Why would the alarm go off as I go in? And there was my teammate, Mark, sitting at the circulation desk. And I walked up and I was like, that's weird. And he's like, yeah, that is weird. And I said, well, maybe it's one of the books that I have in my backpack that didn't get demagnetized. So the bindings of the books had these little silver strips that were some sort of a metal. They were magnetized. And when you checked out a book, they'd run it through this little mechanism that would demagnetize them, and that's what set off the alarm. So I thought for some reason one of them hadn't been or became magnetized again, whatever it was. So I gave him all my books and he ran them through the thing. And I went upstairs and I studied for a couple hours, and it was time to leave. And as I left, I set off the alarm again. And I thought, this is so weird. But I left and I gave him the books again. He's like, oh, well, don't worry. If it sets it off again, don't worry about it. So he demagnetized them. I go through the door again and it goes off. And I look back and I'm like, what is going on? He's like, I don't know. So I leave. And then the next day I go back to the library and I repeat the same thing all over again. And this time I don't know the person at the desk. And I'm like, I don't know why this is happening, but it keeps happening. And they're like, well, I don't know. I said, I'm not stealing anything. Go through my stuff. And they're like, we believe you. It's fine. So finally, after 3 or 4 days of this, I believe the first one I found was in my wallet. I found one of the silver strips that was in my wallet that had been magnetized. And I thought, okay, good, funny guys. And I confronted them and said, hey, good job, guys. You got me. That was a good prank. I had a good sense of humor about it. And that night I walked into the library and immediately set off the alarm again. And I thought, what is going on? So I began to realize that not just was it my wallet, but they had put them in my backpack in spare little, any place they could find a nook or cranny. There was one of these little strips. They had removed the inner sole, the cushion from my shoe, and had put one in each of my shoes. I had a classic St. Lawrence belt, which has a fabric in it. They'd ripped a little hole in the fabric and slid one into there. And literally for the rest of my time as a student at St. Lawrence, about a year and a half, I would walk in and out of the library, and there was about a 75% chance that I was going to set the alarm off. It got to the point where everyone at ODY knew who I was and what had happened. So I'd walk in, set the alarm off, and they'd just wave me on. We know, go ahead. And then I would leave, and I could have robbed the library blind because I had carte blanche to walk in and out of that place without anyone checking, even though I was setting the alarm off every single time. Well, of course, I kind of became numb to it after a point because it's something that you experience every day. It's just that's my experience with the library. I set off the alarm. Fast forward 16 years. I've graduated from St. Lawrence. I've moved out of the area. I'm living in the Boston suburbs with my wife and 3 children. And I had the opportunity to return to Canton for a job interview at St. Lawrence. And, my parents still live in the area, and all of this opportunity to kind of come back home and raise my kids in my hometown. I was really excited about the opportunity and also really kind of nervous. I mean, anytime you're on a job interview that's going to involve a massive life change, like this is a big moment in your life. And so building up to it, I'm rehearsing all of the answers I'm going to give to questions. And I feel like, this is so high stakes. And I just don't want to do anything that could jeopardize my opportunity. I want to put myself in the best position that I can to succeed in this job interview. So I'd had a meeting or two. I was probably about halfway through the interview process, and anyone who's ever been through a job interview process in higher ed knows that, no, it's not an hour-long interview with one person. It's a series of meetings over the course of a day that it will wear you out. You're probably going to meet 20 to 30 people in several different settings. So we're about halfway through that process. And I look at my itinerary and it says, okay, the next meeting is in ODY. And so I'm walking with the vice president of communications to this next meeting. And as we approach the building, my heart starts beating. I break out in a cold sweat. And I'm almost in a sheer panic because I think to myself, oh my God, I am going to set off the alarm. It was the most visceral physical reaction to a memory I've ever had in my entire life. And it was brief because, the reality is it wasn't a big deal. Like even if I had, there was nothing on my person. There's no conceivable way 16 years later that I was going to set that alarm off. But I had that feeling like I might because I'd done it so many times before. And I had that moment of panic, and I took a deep breath, and then I told the story. And I said, you're never going to believe this, but I am terrified that I'm going to set off the alarm when we walk into this building. And she said, why would you think that? So I told her the whole story. We had a good laugh about it. But, I've heard about people who've lived through traumatic events who forget about them and are suddenly triggered by a smell or being in a similar setting or seeing a face or a song, whatever it is that triggers a memory. And I'd always believed those people, but I'd never known what it felt like to have that happen. And I'm lucky. I don't have any real traumatic moments in my life. There's nothing that I can point to and say, yes, this could trigger me into a spot where I felt truly panicked and upset and back in a moment where I was in danger or I felt fear for my safety. This was just a moment where I grew to understand what it would be like and have empathy for people who have been through those experiences because it was an incredibly powerful moment for a very silly thing.
Thanks so much to Aaron Todd for his story, and thanks to you for joining us. You can let me know about all the stupid, ridiculous you did as a kid by writing to me, ethan@ncpr.org. That goofy music you heard earlier was by Silent Partner, and our theme music is by famous letter writer of Plattsburgh. The Howl is a co-production of NCPR and the Adirondack Center for Writing. The show is written, produced, and edited by me. I'm Ethan Shanty. David Summerstein is our script supervisor. Doyle Dean is our production manager. Caitlin Kelly handles all things social media. And Bill Hanel is our director of digital calisthenics and synergy, whatever that means. To find out more about the Adirondack Center for Writing, hear more episodes, and support this show, visit ncpr.org/howl. Coming up on next week's episode, AJ Porchette tells us about the lovely, dangerous, exhilarating world of downhill skiing.
We were sitting at the supper table when the door burst open. He came in, threw his hat and gloves on the island in the center of the kitchen and said, "It's better than sex."
For North Country Public Radio, I'm Ethan Shanty. This is NCPR.